Lando Norris has been heavily linked to Red Bull after Daniel Ricciardo made a shocking return in AlphaTauri, a move that caught the fans of the sport quite surprised. The sole goal of Ricciardo's commitment to the worst team on the grid, the sister team of Red Bull, was for him to have a go at Perez's seat once the Mexican's contract is up, or even earlier. However, his plans have taken a massive hit after his former teammate Norris, who paradoxically cost him the place in McLaren last year, has entered the group of candidates that are poised to join Red Bull soon after the team has changed its philosophy in terms of having one dominant driver. So, will we see two of the best friends on the grid, Verstappen and Norris, fighting out along each other in the same car? Now, the first thing that comes to mind is why? Why would Red Bull want to jeopardize what they have right now and just throw everything they possibly can at Verstappen, the man that brought them back into championship winning ways and the man that will likely continue his dominance until the 2026 regulations hit? Well, the truth is, there's been a shift in philosophy from the new ownership and management at Red Bull. And Oliver Mintzlaff, the man who's responsible for Red Bull F1 racing, wants to see more freedom taken away from Helmut Marko and have two competitive drivers in the team fight for the win, unlike now where it's only Verstappen ahead. This isn't something that can be influenced by team principals or special advisors, because it's the owners of the team we're talking about. That's the same as Mike Crack trying to convince Lawrence that Lance is not fit for F1 and should be out of the sport for the betterment of the team. Therefore, if rumours are to be believed, then Verstappen will soon receive competition like no other, and apart from Norris, Leclerc has been put into the mix as well. But if this was the scenario that Red Bull opted for, then why did they promise something to Ricciardo that they couldn't eventually fulfill? After all, Ricciardo has been loud and clear about not wanting to drive for any team out there, and if he has the chance of competing for race wins and podiums, then that's what he's aiming for. This was confirmed weeks before his commitment to AlphaTauri, and after the tyre test in Silverstone, one that saw him deliver times that would be enough to put him in the front row next to Verstappen, it does look like he could be the second competitive driver in the team, right? Well, with the recent dip in performance from Perez, anyone is looking to be the master behind the wheel in Red Bull's second car. But what we mustn't forget is the fact that Perez is under contract until the end of the 2024 season. And although the Austrian squad could pull the same move that Racing Point did on the veteran and buy him out of his contract, I highly doubt that they'll disrespect one of the most deserving drivers for Verstappen's maiden championship. Nonetheless, Norris emerging as the next teammate of Verstappen is a topic that got everyone on their feet, and while we're yet to see whether the Brit will commit to this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, there are some factors that strongly indicate this scenario happening in the first place. For example, Norris's manager was seen talking with Helmut Marko in Red Bull's garage in Silverstone, and although the topic was likely the F2 driver, Zane Maloney, one that Mark Berryman also represents, after Marko's statement about Norris potentially being Verstappen's teammate in the near future, I doubt that the young superstar didn't come across as a talking point in their conversation. Berryman has represented Norris ever since his karting days, and it's obvious that his words will be respected by the young driver. Although McLaren made a massive leap with their latest upgrades introduced in Austria and Silverstone, Norris is very skeptical that the team will continue with this uprising form and will challenge Red Bull constantly for the podium and race wins. Obviously, that would be the goal once the team builds a championship-winning car, which was given as a promise to Norris once he signed the extension back in 2021. But seeing where Red Bull is right now, I don't think that Norris will have second thoughts if the team openly comes and offers him Perez's seat. When talking about having Norris as Verstappen's teammate, Marko was full of praise for the current McLaren superstar, as he went on to elaborate, Norris is under contract with McLaren until 2025, but he's the strongest of the young drivers. His youthful nature will also suit him better at Red Bull, and it's no secret that Max and he are good friends. Well, there are a lot of loose ends here, and one of them remains Perez's performance and Ricciardo's commitment to Red Bull. If by any chance Perez finds it in himself and challenges Verstappen for race wins and maybe spices up the championship, then I highly doubt he won't receive the seat in 2024, because in this case he would be the driver that Red Bull would be desperately looking for, Verstappen's challenger. But he has emerged as one in the previous season and in the current one as well, only for him to disappear around Monaco and Barcelona and complain about different factors such as the car's upgrades or the weather conditions. Inconsistency is not something Red Bull is looking for, and if the performance of Perez continues the way it is right now, there might be a huge possibility that the impatience of Red Bull will resurface yet again in the same way it did for Nyck de Vries, and they'll bring Ricciardo on board. What the Aussie needs to do right now in one of, if not the worst cars on the grid, is to bring home points constantly and show that whatever he's done in Silverstone wasn't pure luck. Yes, he did drive the best car during the tyre test, the RB19, but if we're to trust Tsunoda's real pace from the beginning of the season, it's obvious that there is a lot of potential hidden behind the car. It's just the driver who needs to be putting in extra work and going that extra mile to finish in the points, in a similar way that Albon is doing with Williams. Nonetheless, Ted Kravitz feels like Ricciardo's mission is not going to be an easy one, and that although this is the only way that he could get his seat in Red Bull, this road is not going to be covered with rose petals for the Aussie. When talking about this matter, the Sky F1 pundit went on to elaborate, "It's all well and good basing it on the Red Bull's RB19, which is the class of the field, but he's not driving that car. He's driving probably one of the slowest cars on the grid, if not the slowest, which is the AlphaTauri. The AlphaTauri had some upgrades at Silverstone, and they finished further down than they normally do with a non-upgraded car. This is not a great AlphaTauri, it's fair to say. Not to say that they shouldn't have replaced de Vries, clearly it wasn't working, but the surprise is why Daniel Ricciardo would want to go into that car that is worse than the McLaren he left last year, probably." Well, the only question remains, will Ricciardo be able to put the car where it needs to be, and will that be enough for Red Bull to consider him the second competitive driver in the team? Considering what kind of season he had in his previous stint with McLaren, being Verstappen's wingman is not just the worst job for a driver who's looking to end his racing career with the team that started it all. But from my perspective, this potential stint would either last 1 to potentially 2 years, 2024 and 2025, and it wouldn't give Ricciardo the perspective he wanted to have with the team, end it all here on a competitive matter. It's obvious that the sacking of de Vries came mostly because Helmut Marko is now not a very trusted individual in Red Bull because of his belief that de Vries was the right driver to replace Pierre Gasly. But with the new management, and with Horner's disbelief of the true potential that de Vries is holding behind himself, it's evident that Marko's call was the wrong one. Therefore, with how many praiseworthy words Marko said about Norris, I don't see this as too far-fetched a scenario because of Red Bull's potential to promote their brand using F1 as a platform. And having two competitive drivers is definitely what they need in order to boost their sales elsewhere. Not to mention that Norris brings massive sponsorships with himself, which is one of the main reasons why he got that McLaren seat anyways, as he is declared one of the best paid drivers out there in the modern F1 world. With this in mind, do you think that Norris will ruin Ricciardo's plans to return to Red Bull? Or do you think that both of them will have a shot at that seat at Perez's expense? Let us know in the comments down below.